Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome in. Come on in. Thank you so much for joining us. Are we streaming? We are. Welcome to episode 7. Just making sure. We can. All right. So let me get Facebook to the party. All right. So now let's get this party going. Make sure we are doing this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, YouTube. You're always first to the show. Thank you so much for joining the Remarkable Shift live series show. This is episode 7 for season 1 of the Remarkable Shift. And today we are talking about fear and how to change anxiety into action. So we're going to talk about the fear advantage. So I want to make sure if you are watching me live or the replay, let me know where you are tuning in from and let me know if you can hear me and everything is good. While we are waiting for more people to arrive, let me know if you want to share something that you have been fearful of. And it really doesn't make sense, right? It could be real to you, but think about it. Let me know. Okay, perfect. So everyone can hear me. Great. So, like I said, that's part of going live with all the technology and streaming everywhere. We are making sure everyone gets invited to the party. All right. So, like I said before, I am Dr. Vernita 𝐁𝐨𝐲𝐵. I go by Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist, and I am your host for the Remarkable Shift live series show. So, today we're going to learn about the fear advantage and how to turn anxiety into action, as I already said. And you will gain insights on how to reframe fear and use it as a motivator to step out of your comfort zone, or as I like to say, you will hear past your limit line. So this episode will set the stage for teaching you actionable strategies to channel that fear into progress. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, if you've been around, I have 2 live series, but for this one, subscribe to the channel. You go to drvernitaglenn-white.com/remarkable shift, and you will get updates and behind the scenes content and some secret content. And so subscribe, let me know that you're on there, and things will start coming to you, and then you'll start getting updates as well. And as we go throughout the show, and if something resonates with you, go ahead and comment advantage down below, or you can DM me the word advantage for additional insights that you're gathering from the show or any additional questions that you may have. So while you are doing that, grabbing your notepads and everything, I want to put out that I am hosting a 5-day intensive. Well, it's more than 5 days. There are some bonus days, but it's a core 5 days intensive called the Affluent Leader Intensive. And I want you to learn all about your personal leadership in your life, career, and or business, right? And so if you want to learn more information about that, go to drvernitaglenn-white.com/affluent leader. So it will be a 5-day intensive. I really would like for you to come. Give me your thoughts, your feedback, and anything else that you want to learn about leadership. Now, I do have an outline, but this is to serve you in any capacity that I can. So let me know your thoughts. What are you struggling with? What do you want to go to the next level in? Because it does really start with your personal leadership. And we're not talking about leadership as in just a title only. So we start February 25th this month, February 25th, and we go to March 5th. So like I said, it's a core 5 days plus some bonus. So we start February 25th. You must register. And I'm doing something super fun for people who are attending live. So get the information, mark it on your calendars, and it is going to be a jam pack. So it's not just a monologue. You will be required to participate because I don't want you to just sit and get. All right, so enough about that. The information is in the description box below, also in my bios to subscribe to the show, the Remarkable Shift Live Series show, or to learn more information about the Affluent Leader Intensive so you can get more get early access, because right now things are happening. And if you're on that list, again, some more secret content and you can get some things on and popping before we start on the 25th. So let's get into the show. What about fear being fuel? You've heard that before, but for some reason, if you haven't accomplished your goals or if you're not moving towards those goals, especially if you're watching this live, this is February, and we know that people make resolutions in January and they slide down in February and people don't even look at them come March, right? And then we do this whole rebirthing thing in the spring. But if we start focusing, and the reason why is because a lot of it has to do with fear. But if we start looking at fear as fuel, things will start moving in a more positive direction in our lives. So what if I told you that fear is not the enemy? You may have heard that before, but how many of you actually believe that fear is not the enemy? It is actually your greatest untapped advantage. That is why the word for this episode is advantage. Yes, fear is an untapped advantage. So whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, which is a real thing, fear of rejection, or stepping outside of your comfort zone, or moving past your limit line, as I've learned to say this from a few coaches that I've had before, because I like that, moving past your limit line. I think a lot of us have gotten out of our comfort zones in different ways, but how many of us have actually moved past the limit line? So you set up a goal, you have a vision, but it requires you to take that additional extra step, and you're like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. You've done things, but do you cross over that line? And then once you cross over it, how do you know that you're growing? Is because you're expanding that line. So if you haven't expanded that limit line, then you're not growing. But we're going to talk about that today. And then I'll show you how to flip that fear on its head and use it to fuel your next breakthrough. So once you get a breakthrough, you keep going so you can get the results that you desire. All right, so welcome back to the Remarkable Shift Live series show, where we share practical strategies and actionable insights so you can apply them immediately. So if you notice in previous episodes that I've given you something to do right now, or at least in the next 24 hours. So that is the whole goal of this show, to give you something that you can apply immediately, not 3 months from now, not 6 months from now, but right now. And we're breaking through mental barriers to build healthy habits that stick. So the Remarkable Shift will empower you to take control of your life and make remarkable your new normal. How would that feel if remarkable became your new normal? So you don't have to settle for a life that's just okay, right? It's time to get reacquainted with the life that excites you. So don't miss a moment of your next level transformation. Be sure to subscribe to the show, as I already mentioned to you, so you can get that secret content, and you get a free gift when you sign up, because everyone, if you're listening, it is time to shift into becoming remarkable. And so now let's get into fear. Fear isn't something to avoid. And I know you probably heard, like, well, what if you could do something without fear? But that's the wrong question to ask. What can you do with fear, right? Because fear is just an emotion like anything else. You don't hear people saying, well, what would you do without happiness, right? We don't hear that. What would you do without joy? What would you do without insert whatever emotion? And then you don't hear people say, well, I'm just too happy to start this. I'm too happy to join this. It's always, I'm too scared to. Or if you don't verbalize the word scared, your action shows it by you not taking action. But we never do that with the other emotions. So when you realize that fear is just an emotion like everything else, you'll learn how not to avoid it, but something more to lean into it. All right. So get your notes, your pencil and paper, if you're old school, or open up your notes app and get ready to get these strategies, because I don't want you to just listen. I can't wait for the comments to come back and say, you know what, Dr. V, I actually leaned into my fear and this is what I got accomplished. That makes, me excited. Just like when I was teaching, it was cool showing up, letting the kids know that, I got my stuff together and I'm teaching them something. But the biggest reward came when they were successful with their exams, or when they took a conversation that we had, applied it in real life, and came back with a positive result. So that is what the type of energy I want you to give me here. So don't just like and just say, oh, good show. Go out and tell me what you did based on this episode that shifts you into the direction that you want to come, the direction that you want to go, so you can get the results that you have been waiting for. So did you know that several studies have shown that 91% of fears never actually come true? Yet fears hold so many people back. You can go Google the top fears that people have, and then it's like, what are the chances of that actually happening to you? And I know people like to say public speaking is a big one. It's not a fear of public speaking. It is really the fear of what happens on the other side of that. So I want you to think about that. Whatever you are afraid of, or something that you've been avoiding because it's fear, think about it. Is it the thing itself, or it is the outcome if you do the thing? So those are some different things. Now, this isn't to say that, your fears are just imaginary and get over them. No, because they're very real to you, but you have to learn how to take control of your mind. So if it is a lion or, something that's real danger, you have to think about it. Is this really going to cause me bodily harm, or is it something that's in my mind that's keeping me from going to the level that I want to go? Is it something that's keeping me from pursuing the mission, the vision, the purpose that God put inside of me to accomplish before I leave this earth? Which one is more terrifying, right? The lion scares me. But, I've talked to some people and they're like, yeah, I'll go out in the cage, if I'm in a cage with a lion rather than public speaking. I was like, okay, we got to do some work there. All right. But so I don't want to just talk to you like, like I've overcome all of my fears. There are some lessons that I had to learn. I'm going to share something like right now. Usually I like to go way back for some lessons and bring them in, or I'll get another example of maybe a past client. But I thought as I was going through the notes for this show, let me talk about something that was right now in real time that I am working through. So at the beginning of the episode, or if you watch any of my content, I've talked about, well, hinted at launching a new a project or a new side in my business. And it is the Affluent Leader Intensive, which will lead into a deeper level of working with me. But the main focus is getting through the intensive and launching it. And I've done like several quote unquote launches before, but it was mostly like, let me post this, do all the things around it without actually contacting people. It was like post and hope, right? How many of you have experienced that you posted something and you're like, if you build it, they will come? No, they won't, right? So now I've learned like, well, if you want this to be successful, then you need to build those relationships and actually talk to people, right? Even in the virtual space, there's still a way to talk to people. Have an online business, there's still a way to talk to people. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the first thing that popped up was when I did something back in 2020, 2021. I was focusing on my consulting business. And I was like, well, yeah, coaching was cool, but I'm really good at, STEM education, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and did a lot of work in that. So let me go be a consultant in that area. Especially that time, it was a push. It was, a lucrative space to be in. So I was like, clearly I can be successful in this, right? And so I got all the stuff that I learned because I had started working with coaches. I had started working, with business coaches, personal development coaches, which I now call personal leadership, speaking coaches, like all of these things, right? To get, everything up and going. And I went to reach out to about every single school district that had a STEM program in the United States of Florida. I wish I could find my spreadsheet, but I literally sat there, looked at every single state, every single district, every single county, and said who had a STEM program, put them in the spreadsheet, found the contact person, email and phone numbers, okay? And then reached out to every single one of these people. And so, like, I had a mindset coach at the time, and she was like, well, just do it like you're inviting people to a party. And I was like, okay, I was like, kind of popular in school. So, yeah, who come to my party? And when I say it was crickets, not even a response to an email, not a call back, no, nothing. So I'm telling you this, like, this is going through my mind like at rapid speed as I'm working through a new project. So talking about fear and anxiety, right? I did get one call, and I don't know if I end up talking to the governor so it was some kind of big person. I think it was in the state of Georgia, or one of the Carolinas, but I know it was somebody up there. Like how I got their number, I don't know, but he picked up the phone and I started talking to him, and I gave him my pitch, and he said, well, I get a lot of these phone calls, but your idea sounds really good, but unfortunately I can't like endorse you or, say, hey, do X, Y, Z, because, it's like, well, if I do that, then I have to do that for everyone. And, you know, whether it was true or not, I understood it. You know, it's like in the position that you're in, well, I can't say, you know, I endorse you. And then, you know, all of that. So I totally got it. But because of all the other rejections and my anxiety and my fear and some other like mental stuff that I was working through, negative head chatter, I didn't see that as an opportunity. I just saw all of that as a big failure. And so now when I want to do this new project, and I have to pretty much take a similar approach, it's like, no. And I had started avoiding it. I got back into my old habits of, you know, I'll post and see what happens. But it's like, if you want to do something different, you have to push past that limit line. You have to get out of that comfort zone. Well, out of my comfort zone, of course, is being on camera, talking. I have no problem doing any of that. Although I know for some of you, you're like, you literally die a little bit inside if you have to come on a camera and then to do it live, you know, but I had already gotten through that. So now it's like, now you need to push that line and do this other side so that you can have the success. So I'm telling you that because I don't want to share anything with you all, whether you are listening to me out here and, you know, with the free content, or if you are a paid client. If I haven't done it, just like when I was teaching mathematics, if I didn't solve the problem, I'm not going to expect for you to solve it. It may not be the exact same things, but if I'm putting myself through certain exercises or, you know, pushing past my limit lines often, then that's why I would be a great advisor, consultant, strategist for you as well, because I understand those feelings. So I'm not taking them lightly, but I'm also here to challenge you to rise above it and know that you can do this, because I am in this right now. So looking back on it, like I said, I missed that opportunity because I was so caught up in the anxiety of being rejected or feeling like I was being rejected, instead of grasping onto that little glimpse of hope when he said, "Oh, I think this is a great idea." And so I just took it and just said, forget it. And I didn't want to do anything else in the STEM area. Then fast forward, when I did something similar, I'm always doing things like, I'm always like building things for people to come and experience what I can do for you. But I understand what's happening in society. Everyone was like, come to my free thing so I can sell you something. Come to my free thing. And of course, I am going to offer an invitation to you if it fits you. But what I want to provide the value for it, I would rather for you to show it to my whatever I'm doing that's free and you get some results, then you come back and tell me about that, right? But before, again, all of this, you know, anxiety coming up in my head, I was like, well, you know, you did this thing before and you had a few people show up, you know, and instead of me celebrating those few people, I was like, well, it didn't get the big numbers like I hear people saying that they got, so I must have failed. So fear is bumping up against me saying, well, you don't want to do that again. You don't want to embarrass yourself. What if nobody comes, right? So we're going to get into how are we going to work through all of this. And I was doing this while I was working with coaches, but it was still something that was missing. So this is, well, I'm not going to get off topic. Go back and watch the other video that I talk about the lie that coaches and consultants tell you. But if you don't go back, the key is you got to check in with your star player first. No amount of strategies or anything is going to get you to where you want to be if you don't tune in with your star player, if you don't check your personal leadership. And that's something that I had to do. All of the strategies for the most part were great. They worked. Other people got results, you know, but it's like, well, why wasn't I getting those results? And it's because there was something that I had to deal with. It was an internal battle. So I had to work on do the inner work so I can get the outer results. And I created a whole formula for that, by the way. So one thing I did was I had to tap into who the ultimate coach and consultant strategist, and that was Jesus. And I know it's like, it may sound cliche, but the way I had to reframe that is Jesus went and told everybody about his message and people rejected him. Everyone didn't follow, even though he gave the invitation, although he quote unquote posted or, you know, made announcements. Everyone did not follow him, but he still went forth and said simple message, and he stayed with that same message until the day he died. So if Jesus was getting rejected, if Jesus was getting ghosted, or, you know, they would like show up and then either ridicule him or was silent, you know, all of those things that we have, Jesus did experience those things. So who am I to think that I wouldn't experience those? So I had to reframe what was happening in my mind. So that was a long way of letting you know that I do understand, but I've also done things to get me on the other side of that. So I'm going to introduce you to this framework. And although I have my personal frameworks, that I work through with clients, I'm giving you like general frameworks so that you can grasp on something so that you can take action right now. So this framework is called the Fear Advantage Framework. No, I did not come up with it, but I think it's a great tool for you to put in your toolbox, something to help you to reframe and move forward. So FEAR, it stands for face, embrace, act, and reframe. Okay. So remember, I talked about reframing. That's like the last part. But it's like, okay, Dr. B, what do I do to get to that point? I am always that person like, okay, I hear you, but what do I do like before that or before that one? Like, how did you get here? Like, I need all the steps. And I'm not saying all the steps before I do something, but sometimes it's like when people say, well, feel the fear, do it anyway. What in the world does that look like? That is why I'm here to give you these practical steps. So F, face, acknowledge and name your fear. So just like I did in the example that I gave you, one of the fears was I will get rejected or people will ghost me. And I do all that work and no results. And it's like, well, first you need to unhook yourself. You just need to be obedient and do what you need to do. But you also need to acknowledge that there are some things that you need to do first. When you do those things, what's the fear about taking that next step? So for a while, it was like, well, I don't want to post it, or I don't know what people are going to say. Okay, we work through that. So now we post, but there's another step. What do you need to acknowledge in that next step? What is your fear around that next step? Oh, that I'll be pushy, or people think that I'm salesy, like I said, which is strange because if you're in business, you have to sell. You gotta sell. It's like, especially if you're in the online business, people gotta know that your store is open, right? So that's the other side. And so it's like, I don't want people to have that perception of me. But then it's like, I know my heart. I know that I am genuinely here to offer solutions and to bridge gaps for you for where you want to go. Where, I've been doing that all my professional career and in this consulting space and advisory space, right? So I know that I can do that, but then letting other people know that I can do that for them. So it's like, okay, well, I don't want them to think that, okay, well, what are we going to do about that? So I had to acknowledge it and then I had to name the thing. So it's not enough to say, well, I'm just afraid of this. What are you afraid of? And then put a name to it. Because if you ignore it, then you're amplifying it. And it's going to be like the Verizon network back there in the back of your mind. And you're going to wonder, like, why do you always bump up against yourself or whatever? It's going to feel like a glass ceiling. It's like I can see above, I can see the next level, but why can I get there? It's because you've been ignoring the problem and it's going to get louder and louder and it's going to show up in a way, one way to it shows up is like self-sabotaging. So you have to start identifying exactly what you're afraid of and the why. That's what a lot of people don't do. They keep running to keep finding the answers to things. And it's like some things you need to sit down and self-diagnose yourself. What is it and why are you afraid of it and be honest with yourself? Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're gonna keep going around in circles. And then let's say you do get to another level, it's just going to be a bigger fall. So I personally would rather do some things on a smaller scale, get my lessons, my bruises and all of that before it goes, mainstream. So that way I'll have enough, reps, endurance and all of that and strength so that I can work through the bigger problems. All right. So that's why you have to face it. So what can you do is to write down your biggest fears and ask what's the worst that could realistically happen. I know it sounds so simple, but I encourage you, I ask you, I plead with you, do this. Actually, write it down and ask yourself, what's the worst that could realistically happen? I had a situation a few months, well, last year, towards the end of last year. And it was one thing that I fear. And this is why in Job, you can't, even though people say, well, Job did no wrong. Job had one thing he did. He feared something. And that's when, I'm not saying that that's the reason, but we literally cannot have any fear because that's an open door for things. There was something that I feared. I didn't really like talk about it much, but it was still lingering so that there was an open door. And then so once faced with that, I had to say, okay, V, if this happens, what's the worst thing? And I went to the worst possible scenario. And even in the worst possible scenario, I still had my life, my limbs, like in my right mind. I did not die. Right. And I know that could be, I mean, depending on, let me know how you take it. But when you take yourself there, what is literally the worst that can happen? And then you have to ask yourself, can I survive this worst thing? And if you can, you'll realize that you're stronger than you think. If you don't think you can, allow yourself to feel that. And I had to do this. I had to allow myself to feel those emotions like it was real. Like, I mean, crying, the ugly cry, like all the terror. I felt all of that and went on the other, because my brain went there. My mind took me there, right? It happens twice, once in your head and once in real life. So in my head, I took myself there and I was like, am I still safe? And I was like, I am still safe, considering. And it was like, all right, we can survive this. So try that and let me know. Now, then you ask yourself, what's the best possible outcome? And if I lean into this fear, what could happen for the best possible outcome? And that's something that a lot of people don't do. That's a lot of the issues that I have in the personal development space. This is why I'm shifting like to personal leadership, because it's so much on, oh, what's the worst thing? Or I got to fix myself. A lot of times, if you focus too much on your problems, then you're going to stay stuck. So now you have to start going into solutions or the positive side. You got to get yourself out of that ditch. What is the best case scenario if I did this thing? And I too did that. And I was like, all right, I can feel that emotion. So I know what both sides feel that way, because you have to shift. This is why it's called the Remarkable Shift Show. You have to shift your mindset to focus on the opportunities instead of the disaster. So many people stay in that disaster and then they go into this downward spiral. So once you face it, then you name it, and then you give yourself both sides of the spectrum and let your mind, because once you do, what happens if you focus so much on the fear, then your mind starts trying to solve problems, because that's what your brain does, like look for solutions, but it's going to look for solutions towards the disaster. But then if you start focusing on the opportunities, then your brain is going to start finding solutions for the opportunities and focus on the positive. It works that way. Look at any of your past situations and start analyzing and reflecting and see. All right, so E stands for embrace. I love it because I'm all about embracing your brilliance. And I have a book, Embracing Grit for Greatness. So I love embracing. So this one is embrace. Lean into the discomfort. All right, stop trying to avoid it. So many things like, I don't want to do something. And I'm not talking about it for a lot of you who are elite performers, highly successful, industry titans, moguls in the making, really up there. You've achieved so much. Your avoidance isn't something major. It's the small things, that saying, I always get caught up on it or tripped up on it. The small foxes ruin the bushes. It's the small things. So the small things that you're avoiding is causing this massive, fear monger that's coming, in your life. And so you have to lean into that discomfort and see what you're avoiding, because what you're avoiding is the very thing you need to be leaning into. So the more that you face it, the less power it gives you. So it's just like vocalizing it. So if you stop avoiding it, if it's for you to get on live, if you're afraid to get on camera, you have to get on camera. If you're afraid of public speaking, you have to lean into public speaking. If you are afraid of making offers, if you're in a business, then you have to make more offers. If you are afraid of starting a family, getting to a relationship, then you work towards those things. Don't just be out here all willy-nilly, but you know what I'm saying? The things that you are, especially if it's the outcome that you want. You have this vision of the thing that you want, but you're avoiding the very things that are going to take you closer to that. Those are the things you lean into. So practice, here's an action step for you to take, and let me know that you're going to take action on this today or within the next 24 hours, is to practice micro doses of fear exposure. Small, manageable actions that push you just outside of your comfort zone or just beyond your limit line. There was a guy I used to watch on YouTube, David 𝐓𝐨𝐵𝐸. It's one of those. He does a lot of filming kind of content, but he did a thing where every 30 days he did something new. So whether it was taking cold showers or eating alone, like in a public space, or saying hello, something like that. He did something every 30 days and he did it for an entire year, something different every 30 days to push himself outside of the norm or everything that he would do, out of his comfort zone. Or even if he wasn't uncomfortable, it was like, well, how can I grow and expand? Because that's why I like to use both comfort zone and limit line, because we can do, like I said, okay, I can do something out of my comfort zone. But if I And then you get outside of your comfort zone. It's like, okay, that becomes another you're in another comfort zone, but it's like, what is the line? What is something else? You have to expand that, right? So he did something like that, but small doses on things. So whatever, and it doesn't have to be related to your goals, right? Sometimes it could be sometimes you need to do something like off the path to get into the habit of doing something and then get back on the path. So what is something small that you can do that you can track? It was like, okay, I, went to the store, or well, I don't know if people go to the malls, but I went to a restaurant to eat alone by myself, right? For some people, that is like terrifying. Like, I would never, right? I go all the time. I used to go all the time by myself to the movies. I travel by myself. Like, that was not a problem. But I know for some people, it is. If it's going live, start with, I think on Facebook, I don't know about the other channels, but I know on Facebook you can do a private version where you go on live and test it. Or then you can start doing something for like 2 minutes. Hey, write something out. Hey, say what you need to say, and then get off. And then till you start working your way up. One thing that I started to do was live. I had did Facebook lives for 30 days in a row, way back, and that's what got me to like, I can turn camera no problem. So something like that. Now, one thing to do if you're like, okay, Dr. V, I hear you, but I'm not doing that. But so try this. Turn your fear into curiosity. Instead of saying, oh, I am so scared of doing this, reframe it. See how it all goes together? Say, I'm curious to see how this would turn out. Again, it's all mental in your mind for the most part. You have to tell your brain, you have to lead your brain into that. Did you know that your body can't tell the difference between fear and excitement? Is what you tell it, right? So if you say like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, your brain was like, well, my hands are sweaty, or I feel that in my stomach, or my heart is racing. Normally that's fear, but you're telling me I'm excited, so I guess I'm excited. Right? So you would think like the most, successful people, you would think that they had this special gene, or they have this special gift, and a lot of time it's not. They just take more action than a lot of us. They take bigger steps than a lot of us. They throw themselves out of their comfort zone sooner, quicker, faster than many of us. That's the difference. Or a lot of it, that's why a lot of them have mindset coaches, or I forgot another name for them, high performance consultants and advisors, because it's a lot of the mental things. Like, once you learn a tool set and a skill set, that's pretty much the easy part. But it's the mindset with how you set your mind and how you are constantly working through those things. That's what propels you forward, and that's what my specialty is. That's why part of it is the brilliant solutionist, because I find the best possible solutions, but I also help you think through those things and think through those things differently. So just tell yourself about that. So talk yourself into being more curious than afraid. So like, think of roller coasters. Like, people say that they're terrified of roller coasters, but it's not really that they're terrified. It's that adrenaline rush, and they're excited, and they go through that and they do it again. So it's like, if you were really afraid, would you do it again? No, because somewhere deep down they told themselves like, this is so exciting. And the brain is like, absolutely, let's do it again. So that is what you have to do yourself. That is all part of embracing. The next one is ACT. So ACT is using fear as a catalyst for bold moves. So you have to ask yourself, what fear triggers the adrenaline inside of your body? And then you have to channel that. I'm trying to set something else up. Excuse me. Then you have to channel that, right? So channel it into courageous action. All of this is, you get to lead yourself. Stop letting external influences tell you, or stop thinking that what pops up in your mind is the thing. You have to take control of your thoughts. That's biblical, that's scientific, right? When you get a thought, you supposed to take hold of it, bring it down, tell it what to do. Either I stick with it and we go with that, or I take it and cast it out. So you have to do some action with that. So when fear strikes, take a small action immediately. So if you want to do a video and you're like, oh no, get on the camera ASAP. If you want to say, you know what, I want to take myself out on a date, but then you're like, no, get in the car, run to the car, right? So whatever it is, you have to immediately do something small. So you may have heard of Mel Robbins. She talked about the 5-second rule of like her life was like in the toilet. And she was like, even after being successful, right? Then it was like, she hit somewhere in her 40s and it was like, okay, what is this? Like every part of her life, she said, was like, we don't want a life no more. So she said, well, how did she become like who she is today? And she started with the 5-second rule, and she would literally count backwards like a countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. So she said, whatever thought came in her mind, and she started with just getting out of bed. So it was like, to get out of bed, it was all right: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sit up. And that may have been the only thing she did that day. And she did that day. And she was so honest about it. It was like, she didn't immediately go jump into this massive thing. Like, yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm writing a best-selling novel, a New York Times best-selling novel, or I'm being like the #1 speaker in the world. No, it was literally, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go take a shower. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go into the kitchen and make coffee instead of having your husband bring it to you like you do it today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, put on some actual clothes, right? So those are the things. And when you start doing those micro things and start taking those action steps, then you're training yourself, you're building that muscle, you're building that habit, and you're letting your brain know, like, okay, we don't just sit around, we don't sit in hesitation. So try that. And then one thing that you can do is to set a fear deadline. And so if you don't like the Mel Robbins suggestion, I've done this part that I'm about to tell you. You give yourself a deadline. Like, if I have to do this within the next 24 hours, or it's going to just keep building. So going back to the new part of my business that I'm launching, there's something that I keep telling myself, okay, you have to do it. I was like, no, today, this is what you're going to do no matter what. I don't care if it's 11 o'clock at night. You're not going to go to bed until you get this thing done. Because if you don't, then you're just adding more weight to the anxiety that's already there. So either you're going to blast off or you're going to give yourself 24 hours to take action. So looking at your goals, things that you want to accomplish, what is the smallest thing that you can act on, and then continue to do those daily so you can build those habits. And then R stands for reframe. You heard me talk about this, but it's really transforming fear into a growth tool. A lot of people, like I said, say, well, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Well, then that's the wrong question to ask, because you're going to always, the fear is going to be there. Like, no one says, well, what would you do without happiness? What would you do without joy? What would you do, without, no one says that. So fear is really about the evidence that you are growing. If it's something that you're like, oh, and it caused you to jolt back a little bit, you want to celebrate that, because you're doing something, you've pushed past that comfort zone and you're expanding that limit line. Another thing, like when I was talking about the thing that I need to do, is like, well, what is another reason why I'm afraid, or I'm feeling this fear or this anxiety, is because I really want people to understand that I actually care about them. I actually want to support them, help them, and like I said, bridge those gaps. And I don't want to come across as just another culture consultant, who was like, well, this is the way, an easy way to make money without doing anything. Absolutely not. That's one reason why I chose, getting my PhD in mathematics, right? It's like, I didn't want to take just like the easy way out. No disrespect to anybody who had other majors, but I could have easily done that. And so in this space is like, because it feels saturated, it feels like everybody and their auntie and uncle or friend down the street is a coach. And that's why I don't use the phrase coach, but there's a difference between coaching. Anyway, get too far. But I was like, that was one thing I didn't want to do. And that's because I actually care. And I actually want to make sure that I'm, providing great service and great products. So that's another part of fear being a growth tool, is like, keeps my integrity in check. So if you're doing, and if you're honest, like people who, and I've heard millionaires and billionaires, like I sit in these virtual rooms with these people, like, more times than I used to, right? They still say that there's still a little nudge. They've worked on it enough to where it's no hesitation, but it's just enough there to say, all right, we reached a new level and we still care. We still, they use some other words, right? But they still have that thing there to make sure that they still want to provide the best thing possible. Or that having that little bit of fear lets them know that they're still on the edge, of not settling, or it take this a little bit loosely when I say content, because yes, you are content with what you have, but when you're still living and breathing, there's still like more work for you to do. So if you're doing something new, like, okay, even with whatever success you may have, then you're like, you had this thought to do this project, you work on that. You're not, 100%, you don't know everything about that. So you feel a little fear. That's a good thing because you push yourself outside of, you're expanding yourself, you're growing. So that's one way to measure yourself. Another thing, an action step. So I've given you a lot of them. You had an action step for FEAR, so 4 action steps that you can do within the next 24 hours. Make sure you comment advantage down below or DM me and let me know what action steps you have taken to to see how you can use fear to your advantage. So one thing to just use a fear journal. I think I had this. I didn't stick with it like that long, but I did it for a few weeks. And I tracked moments when I pushed myself through fear. I wrote a whole book, Embracing Grit for Greatness, Becoming Professionally Powerful Through Personal Empowerment. It is available on my website if you want the e-copy and the additional bonuses, or you can head to Amazon. I have a few copies here, so message me if you want me to send you something, and you want to get them directly from me. Message me, but you can go to my site, get the ebook version and the additional bonuses to walk you through, or you can order it from Amazon. But I talked about like things that I was afraid of, but I had to push through anyway. One, leaving my career to pursue my doctoral degree full time. Nobody in my family leaves careers. Like you don't do that. What are you doing? That's insane, right? So that's something that I did. So I did go through this exercise. I don't keep it now, but I remember going through this exercise where I wrote out everything that I was afraid of at first, and then I worked through it. Then this is something that I am working more towards, is celebrating your failures, because each failure brings you closer to the success and it desensitizes you to fear. And I know it sounds weird, but I really, a good example that I can see is sales people who do like cold calls and sales calls. And a lot of people who are really successful in that area, they may come off as like jerks or pushy, but understanding the other side of that is when you have to make hundreds and thousands of cold calls every week, like picking up the phone and say, hey, would you be interested in X, Y, Z? Of course, it's not always like that. And you're constantly having people either hang up on you. That's why I've learned how to like, don't be rude to everybody. One, it may not answer the phone, but if I do answer it, it's like, well, no, thank you, I'm not interested, instead of being rude, because now I'm on the other side of that a little bit. And I was like, I don't want that energy coming back to me. But it's like when you do that over and over and you keep hearing no's, then when you get a no now, it's like, okay, on to the next one. They don't just internalize it and fall to pieces and just like, it takes them months to make their next call. So they become desensitized to it. It's like, all right, and they keep it moving. I have a personal example that just popped up. Thank you. When I was writing my articles, so not just like publishing like on, just websites, but I had to send them to these national journals. And I would write so many of them because like the success rate or the acceptance rate for some of these top journals were very small. So I would send them off, and then you would get a revise and submit. That's good, a revise and resubmit. But sometimes you get a flat out rejection. And I remember my first one, I was like, they're telling me that I'm not good. Like some of these editors would be harsh and brutal. And I remember I would like cry. This is when I was in my doctoral program. All right. So I had a successful career and got into a PhD program. So I'm like, okay, I'm smart. I can write. These people are like, this is garbage. Who does that? Who thinks like this? You're like, oh my gosh. And so I remember my first one, and it just hurt my soul. And a lot of us who went through, our first year, just hurts our little souls, right? Because we're used to being like the top of our game in our industry. And then so after you do that, they're like, you got to write more. And our advisor tells us you have to keep writing. You have to, like, your goal is to get X amount of rejection letters, because if you get this amount of rejection letters, that means you're producing. And so it got to a point where, all right, you told me no, then I would just take it, do a little bit, go submit it to another one, go submit to another one. Somebody's going to take it. So then I was like, well, why didn't I transfer that skill set when I came into business? All right, if I'm reaching out to somebody and we had this conversation, this is the problem that you have, this is the solution I can solve, then do you want the solution? Yes or no? Of course, it's not like that, direct. But then it's like, instead of, falling out to pieces, like, oh my gosh, people think that I suck, I'm not good, I can't help them. It's like, no, you just got to ask more people. You got to be in front of more people. So I gave you that example, is you have to start celebrating your failures. Like, okay, and then when you do that, it means you're in enough action to where it no longer has this grip on you. That's why you get desensitized to it. That's why salespeople, like I said, they can come off as like true salespeople, like on the phone or going door to door, things like that. They can't come across like that is because they're just desensitized. So they're not jerks. They just, but we don't know what they were like to get to that point. Same thing like when I was writing. Even when I was going the traditional route to publish my third book, I put that on pause, but I was going through and I got rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. I got about like 50 rejections, like sent a proposal. And I was like, let me shift to something else. But now when I get back into it and do some and redefine it, and now I got a different perspective, then it's gonna be like, how fast can I get through these so I can get to my yes? In that case, right? So now it's like, okay, you built that skill set. Now we got to apply it somewhere else. That was a long way of saying, find out how you can celebrate your failures, not just your successes, your failures, and then you'll see that you'll start becoming desensitized to fear and take more action. All right, so we are going to wrap up. Let me know if you have any questions or insights or things that you want to share. You can comment down below, but if you want some additional insight, message or comment the word advantage. That's our word for this episode. And I'll be sure to get back to you because I do respond to my messages. If you message me, depending on which platform you're in, it may take a while because I'm going through all of them because people find me from everywhere. All right, so then as we wrap up, we might be thinking like, well, what are some pitfalls or misconceptions? I love talking about misconceptions because I did that when I was a teacher teaching mathematics. And I believe that's what made me like a great teacher because I would study the errors and misconceptions that students would have so I can anticipate the problem before I taught them a concept. So I'm learning to do that in business and in the advice industry as well, especially in the areas of mindset and peak performance or building systems for sustainable success. So one pitfall is waiting for fear to disappear. It's not going anywhere. Fear is always going to be there. Make it your friend because if you keep waiting, then it never goes away and you're never going to take the action and it's going to grow bigger and bigger into something. Fear's energy. And so I'm not saying I'm a doctor, but I'm not a medical professional. But from my experience, if you keep holding on to something like energy, that energy, if you don't get it out, it has to go somewhere. And a lot of times it goes into your body. So if you're getting like a headache or like a migraine, like so like really bad, or you might get some sickness somewhere in your body, dis-ease in your body, it could be something with fear. A lot of times, and I've heard this scientifically, that when people hold on to unforgiveness, and in the Bible talks about that root and that seed, it just digs deep down and it just takes hold. Like people have seen that scientifically and medically, like people who hold on to grudges like that. I don't want to say the C word because I'm not tying all C words to that. But it's like when you get these ulcers or other things in your body, because that is something that you're holding on to. So I believe fear can show up that way too. So the sooner you can express it and get it out, it can go use the energy elsewhere and outside of your body. So like I said, despite fear, you have to take action and don't just wait for you to get confidence, or don't think that you're not just born with confidence. Confidence is a skill set and it's something that you can develop over time, but it only happens if you take action. Another misconception is fear equals weakness. And people have said like, don't show no fear because you don't want to be weak. But you know what? Fear means that I am stepping into something meaningful. That's a sign, like I said, that I care about something. That's a reality check. So if you're getting fear about something, it's because you don't want to be out there just showing up any kind of way. You have some integrity about yourself, and then you actually care about what you're doing. So fear is not a sign of weakness. So reframe fear. Another way to do that is to think about it as courage and action. And it is proof that you're challenging yourself. So if people are calling you weak, just look at some of the action steps that they're taking. Guarantee that they're not. So you are taking action and you are growing and challenging yourself because we're all on these individual journeys. And if we really want to work in synergy and be the best we can for others, then we all have to challenge ourselves and rise to that occasion. Another pitfall is overanalyzing your fear. I used to overanalyze, overthink, and I have to catch myself because I'm very analytical. And it's like sometimes you just need to turn that off, right? And it's dangerous to do that because, analysis paralysis is real. If you keep analyzing and keep trying to find everything, wrong, if you take these, here's the thing, if you take these exercises too far, then you're never going to do anything. That could be the one downside of personal development. Like, you're constantly working on yourself and you're constantly like digging up stuff and, unearthing things, and you never move forward. So you have to do some of the work and then get out there and then go take the action. So go through all the different action steps that I share with you. Do the one thing, stop, and then go take the action, right? Don't keep going in the cycle because you're like, well, I'm gonna keep doing it until I don't feel the fear. I'm gonna keep doing it until I'm fully ready. That's not how this works, because now you're engaged in analysis paralysis, and that's not the vibe that we want. The last thing is thinking fear is always bad. It is not, because we've been taught that. Stop being afraid, be bold, be courageous. All of that is great, but fear is there too, right? Fear, it can be a superpower if you learn how to use it correctly. Because if you don't use fear, then you can walk yourself into real present danger, number one. And then you don't recognize the signs when say, uh-oh, I probably do need to pivot or redirect or shift. This is not the move I need to go in. So fear is a warning signal. Now, a lot of us use it like a stop sign. That is not what fear is. Fear is a warning signal. And sometimes, like I said, your body doesn't know the difference between things like, no, this is a good thing that I'm doing. Of course, it's scary for me to try something different, but it's not harmful. Like, it's not going to cause me any harm, versus I'm about to step in front of a bus and, kill myself or get hurt really badly. Right. So it just an alarm to say, hey, and then it's up to us to say, no, this is okay. I'm going to proceed anyway, versus no, I do not walk down that dark alley. Let's pivot. So you tell, like, the alarm is going to go up. You have to be the one to lead and say, what is the code to dismantle this particular thing? Right. All right. Let me know if you're tracking with me. So that's where you're taking that quick inventory and taking that action, even if it's not fully thought out. You have to get into the habit of moving. And this is not saying you throwing caution to the wind, because you've done all the things you need to do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So don't play yourself, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know when it's time for you to sit and think. And then when it's like, I've looked at everything, I am making the best decision, and we are moving forward. All right. And then, yeah, that was the last pitfall. So like I said, learn the difference between protecting yourself from, like, okay, we do need to do this. We do need to move away from this, or the fear that I'm protecting myself, and me protecting myself is keeping me from getting the desires that I want, right? So let me know if you need any more information about that, or some more clarification around that. All right. So like I said, I've given you 4 things for you to do. Let me know which one resonates with you the most. Let me know what you're going to take action in the next 24 hours, or come back to this video, whether you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, and comment down below. Even if you're listening on the podcast, comment down below and let me know, it's been 24 hours, Dr. B, and this is what I did, because that is the greatest reward that I can receive, other than you liking, comment, and sharing. I really want to know what you're moving towards, because we're not letting 2025 be just another year. This is our remarkable year together. All right. So thank you so much for listening and learning with me. Be sure to comment and subscribe, and actually subscribe to the show so that you can get your free gift and get all the secret content and updates about this show. And as a reminder, I am hosting the Affluent Leader Intensive, which takes place February 25th. We go live daily up until March 3rd or 5th at 11 a.m. Eastern. But for you to get those updates and early access as of now, go ahead and register at drvernitaglenwhite.com/affluent leader. And you can learn all the things that we're going to talk about. And then, like I said, get early access. So as we wrap up, just understand that fear is a compass. It points you towards growth. And when you feel it, lean into it and remind yourself you are on the edge of something remarkable. Until next time, bye.